and help you pick the right stock at the right time.
Good morning, and thank God it's Friday. You're watching Daybreak on Bloomberg Quint Live. I'm Alex Matthew. First, the headlines. Asian markets have opened lower after Donald Trump calls off his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. North Korea, for its part, says it's disappointed that Donald Trump's called off the planned summit, says it's open to meeting the US for the sake of world peace. Sun Pharma and Tech Mahindra are the two nifty companies coming out with earnings today. And J.D. Kumaraswamy will have to prove his majority in the Karnataka Assembly at 12:15 p.m. today. All right, let's turn to the U.S. markets now. And U.S. stocks closed lower after President Donald Trump called off the most anticipated summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, hitting a wave of uncertainty. The move on the Wall Street were accompanied by purchases of safe haven assets. Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle wraps up the complete trading session in the U.S. markets in this report.
Stocks finished lower in Thursday's Wall Street session, but well off the lows. At the end of the day, the Dow fell by about 0.3%. The S&P 500 was down about 0.2%. The NASDAQ, the tech-heavy NASDAQ, fell just fractionally. Now, that represents quite a reversal because at the low, the three major averages had all been down about 1%. The Dow, in fact, down a little bit more than 1% as investors digested the news that President Trump was pulling out of the June 12th summit with North Korea. But again, at the end of the day, stocks finished well off the lows. From a sector standpoint, 7 of the 11 S&P 500 sectors were lower, led by energy, down about 1.7% in sympathy with oil, down more than 1.5%. A few of the top point drags there did include Exxon and Chevron. As for a top sector on the day, the industrial sector did really quite well. One boost for the sector, the railroad space, CSX in particular, rallied. This after one analyst in particular initiated coverage on those companies and on CSX with a buy rating. As for some of the big movers on the day, Whirlpool down about 8%, this on a modified Dutch auction, while Best Buy fell about 6%, this after the company actually beat first quarter estimates handily, but the current quarter outlook was a bit tempered, so those shares did fall on the day. And while stocks overall declined just modestly, the Haven Japanese yen rallied for a second day in a row. In fact, the best two-day stretch for the Haven yen since the middle of February, suggesting that the tone for Thursday's Wall Street session was indeed risk off. In New York, Abigail Doolittle, Bloomberg News.
All right, and here's what Donald Trump had to say about his decision.
Based on the recent statement of North Korea, I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. While many things can happen and a great opportunity lies ahead potentially, I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. If and when Kim Jong-un chooses to engage in constructive dialogue and actions, I am...
So the words he used were tremendous anger and open hostility that has been received from the North Korean regime. And the White House is now considering several sanctions on Pyongyang, apparently, and North Korea remains willing to meet the United States at any time. Stephen Engels of Bloomberg News has this report.
I think the chances of a summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump are exactly the same today, right now as we speak, that they were yesterday. The fact that Donald Trump has canceled is, yes, something that the news media and all of us here, we're going to talk nonstop about. But again, the chances of the summit happening, maybe not June 12th in Singapore, but at some point are probably just as likely today as they were yesterday. The reason I say that is because of the bluster that is happening. This is megaphone diplomacy coming from both sides, which are, they claim they're very good at it. This is an old tactic as well from the North Koreans, and that is ramp up the tension just before then to get maximum concessions ahead of the summit, okay?
You could argue he called his bluff in a way.
That Donald Trump did.
Yeah,
Donald Trump said, well, okay, well, you're going to do that. I'm going to cancel before you have a chance to up the concessions.
So what happens next? Do we ratchet back to 2017 and the hostilities we had at that point?
Well,
Rocket Man.
Again, this is that megaphone diplomacy. The U.S. will use that as an opportunity to gain their concessions from the North Koreans as well. The threat of military has always been there. The threat for maximum economic pressure has always been there and can continue to ramp up. And again, now not Donald Trump, but perhaps Kim Jong-un is on his back heels saying, we need the reprieve from the sanctions. We do want the face from the summit with Donald Trump. Now we're getting those statements coming from the KCNA, which are very different than what we've been getting for the last week or so.
Rather conciliatory, aren't they?
Yeah.
Steve, does this lessen the impact of North Korea saying that it's dismantled the nuclear testing site, or was that kind of just for good pictures anyway?
Yeah, it was going to be a show anyway, because the North Koreans could move their nuclear testing to a different remote mountain site if they wanted to. But these are the pictures we're getting out of this week when the international media, select group of international media, were invited to the northeast of the Korean peninsula, Punggye-ri nuclear testing site, where they did conduct all those 6 nuclear tests. They imploded the 6, or the many tunnels, I guess, where the different tests were that took place. But many people had said that these tunnels had mostly imploded and caved in on themselves anyway after the last test in September.
No independent verification.
No independent verification. Well, I can bet right now they've probably collapsed. But again, this was for show. And again, Donald Trump has perhaps trumped this show, because this is a side story to Donald Trump's cancellation of the summit.
All right, so Bloomberg's Mr. Inglis there talking about the fact that it's bluster from both sides and the possibility of the summit actually continuing, and that's possibly visible in the way that the Asian markets are trading at the moment. You have the Nikkei that was trading in the red, that's now trading in the green. This is a bit of a delayed feed. It's currently trading positive. You have the Shanghai markets that have opened and they're trading about flat. And you also have the Hang Seng that's not down to the extent that you might have thought on account of the update that you have. All right, let's turn to the Indian markets now, and we have Darshan Mehta and Agam Vakil to set you up for the day's trade and also to tell you about the futures and options space. Darshan, first to you. Initially, it was looking like a weak start, but can't really say based on how Asia is doing right now.
Yeah, so most of the Asian markets have managed to go into the red. The SGX Nifty, which was up almost 40 points through the past half an hour, has managed to slip down. It's up just 8 points now, but still above the 10,500 after the big rally that we saw yesterday in trade. Now, so it seems difficult because of geopolitical tensions currently, and that is how SGX Nifty is reacting. Now, coming to what's happening as far as the ADRs are concerned, Infosys was up 2.5%. Remember how the rupee has been steadily depreciating against the dollar, and that is helping the IT companies. So yesterday here also counters like TCS, Tech Mahindra, and as well as Infosys were up in trade. Reddy's, HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank also managing to do well. What didn't do well was Tata Motors, posted the numbers, which was down 6%. Vedanta, because of the entire issues, global commodity prices and what's happening in Tamil Nadu, that's impacting the ADR, and Wipro was down in trade. Now clearly if you're looking at oil was down over 1.3% in trade yesterday. Again, it has managed to inch up slightly in today's trade, but nevertheless we are below the $79 barrel per mark on the Brent side and below the $71 barrel per mark on the WTI side. If you're looking at what happened as far as the base metals in London was concerned, most of them did manage to have a positive close. So aluminium, copper, zinc and nickel, all of them ended with a positive bias. Nickel was up, in fact, up close to 2%. Tin was the only one that didn't do well. Commodities in China have started well. Steel is up almost 1.4%. Aluminium is up almost 0.5% in trade currently. Most of the precious metals are trading rather muted at this point of time. Now, if you're looking at what happened as far as fund flows were concerned, we had a big rally in trade yesterday, but FIs remained net sellers. They sold in 700 crores and DIs bought in almost 1,500 crores in the cash market. Now, if you're looking at which were the sectors which did well, which didn't do well, the Nifty obviously was up almost 0.5%, but look at what happened on the mid cap and small cap. There was heavy selling that was seen on both of them in trade, when the fact that the Nifty was up in trade. IT, Pharma, PSU banks did well. IT and Pharma because of how the rupee is behaving. The PSU banking index has been doing well ever since SBI came out with numbers. The two sectors that didn't do well was the auto number because of Tata Motors and the real estate index, which was down almost 0.7%. Now the Nifty was up almost, the VIX actually fell in almost 7%, given the fact that the market managed to rally in trade. And yesterday was the weekly expiry for the bank Nifty. The Nifty was up 80 points. It was basically, IT as well as private sector banks. So Infosys, TCS, HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank managed to hold on to the Nifty. What didn't do well, Tata Motors fell because of the numbers. ONGC fell because of the windfall tax that has been proposed to be levied. Maruti and GAIL were the other ones. GAIL reacting post the numbers that came in. But Agam, what are the FNOQs indicating?
Well, Darshan, the Nifty went back above the mark of 10,500, and we have seen some changes when it comes to the open interest. So shorts covered as far as the Nifty goes. In the Nifty Bank too, when we've seen some short covering with a decline of around 1%. The India Volatility Index also moved back below the mark of 14, largely range bound between 13.5 and 14.5. The Nifty put call ratio as well remains unchanged. But when it comes to the changes in open interest, what we're seeing is more writing the 10,500 put as the Nifty moved back above that mark, and a little more writing the 10,700 call as well, which may provide near-term resistance towards the upside. In terms of changes in the futures and options in the FNO band, we have Jet Irrigation and Jet Airways moving into the band. We also saw substantial weakness in both these counters. Bharti Airtel moved up by as much as nearly 4%, 16% decline in open interest, short covering there, and Just Dial was the other counter which saw fresh longs. Even as the stock moved up by as much as 6%. So plenty of stocks to watch out for in trade, as well as the benchmark indices as we move into the final trading week, final trading session of this week.
All right, thanks so much for that, Agam. Let's quickly take a check on the rupee and the bond market now. The Indian rupee, along with Asian currencies, gained on Thursday as the dollar retreated after Federal Reserve minutes suggested that the central bank has a reasonably high bar for accelerating its rate hike program. The home currency ended at 68.35, up about 0.1% from its previous close of 68.43. The 10-year yield, the yield on the 10-year bond stood at 7.868%, and that's compared to its previous close of 7.849. Now, the government may levy a windfall tax on oil producers like ONGC in its bid to moderate the rising retail prices of petrol and diesel. PTI reports indicate that the windfall tax will kick in the moment oil prices exceed $70 a barrel, which they have. So what happens under this scheme is that oil producers would have to part with any revenue that they earn from higher oil prices. The revenue so collected would be used to pay fuel retailers like Indian Oil Corporation, HPCL and BPCL, and this is expected to help them absorb the impact due to the rise in oil prices beyond $70 per barrel. Now, the imposition of a windfall tax could be accompanied by modifications in excise duty rates to ease the burden on consumers. Remember, the effective tax is currently over 100% on petrol. Yatin Mota tells you how ONGC reacted to the report on windfall tax.
After a PTI report suggested that the government is exploring option to levy a windfall tax or a similar cess on companies like ONGC and Oil India, which benefit from rising crude prices. Remember, there has been outrage in the public because of rising fuel prices, and if the government was to cut fuel prices, which is basically cut diesel and petrol prices by 4 rupees per litre, the total revenue loss for the government in excise duties could be in excess of 50,000 crores. And in order to compensate for the 50,000 crore revenue loss, the government could put a windfall tax or probably a cess on companies like ONGC and Oil India. Now, not only that, the market did not like the recent acquisition of HPCL as well. The shares of HPCL have been sliding down, and not only that, the company spent nearly 35,000 crores plus in order to acquire HPCL, and most of that was funded via debt. So, we have incremental pressure on interest costs outgo. Not only that, on the valuation front, CLSA believes that the stock is currently pricing in a valuation of $50 to $55 per barrel in terms of oil price, despite the fact that oil is above $80 per barrel. So the remainder valuation gap is simply because the market believes that the subsidy mechanism or a windfall tax is in the offing, and probably that is the reason why we had a sharp reaction in the stock coming in for the trade.
All right. Former ONGC chairman R.S. Sharma is of the view that the windfall tax is a retrograde step and will discourage both domestic and international companies from entering India's oil exploration industry. Listen in.
Thing is, when these crude prices were falling, all the windfall gains were made by the government in terms of that they've kept on increasing the excise duty time and again. 9 doses were done, more than 11 rupees per liter on petrol and more than 13 rupees a liter on diesel. They got collected in various doses of the rises in a 1.5 year period. And every time government kept on saying, if in case the crude prices rise again, they will give the relief for the excise duties. Now the government says that they are not in a position to give the relief because based on those revenues, government has launched various ambitious social welfare schemes, infrastructure projects. Well taken. It's not the government has pocketed the money. They are using it for a legitimate and welfare programs. I'm not doubting that. But the issue comes that should they do it? What signal it will send to international investor community when this recent open acreage licensing policy is launched?
All right, we're nearly at the end of the fourth quarter earnings season, and Sun Pharma is all set to report its numbers today. Darshan Mehta is standing by with what the expectations are. Darshan, it was up in trade yesterday at least.
Yeah, so basically, if you're looking at the numbers, Taro's already out, and Taro makes almost 15% of the revenues, and that was decent. So, but overall, the US markets is still under trouble. So overall, we are still seeing a lot of weakness on Sun Pharma. So revenues will be down almost 6%, profit will be down almost 30%, and EBITDA will be down 18%. So that's the estimate that we have for Sun Pharma at this point of time. Taro's already come out with numbers; they were decent enough, but nevertheless, the sales as well as EBITDA was down for Taro. If you're looking at what the management had said, management had guided for a flattish QOQ number and sales and EBITDA margins in the tune of 20 to 22%. So we are anticipating 21.6% this time around. They have lost market share in their key drug Glivec. There is market share loss that is happening in Absorica. That is something that will impact the US revenue apart from the competition and pricing pressure. But the benefit of the Coreg launch will offset a little bit of weakness as far as some of the US market is concerned. Probably a forex loss will be reported this time around, given the fact how the rupee has been moving. The US markets will definitely be impacted. The other markets, Indian markets, we are seeing a close to a single-digit growth, and so will be the case with the API and the rest of the world market. So expecting a rather muted set of numbers from Sun Pharma today.
All right, thanks so much for that, Darshan. Now, it looks like the electric vehicles push in Maharashtra just got more support. Mahindra & Mahindra, Tata Motors and JSW Energy are said to be interested in setting up a manufacturing facility in Maharashtra, according to sources. The state received investment proposals worth 10,000 crore rupees for electric vehicles. Purva Chitnis has this report.
Yes, after the much-awaited EV policy announcement in Maharashtra, our sources tell us that the state government is expected to receive an investment of over 10,000 crore in the EV space. The state has already received about 3 to 5 proposals, and it's in talks with these vehicle manufacturers to finalize these proposals. Out of these, the big companies such as M&M, JSW Energy, Tata Motors have already submitted their proposals. Now, if you remember, M&M has committed to invest about 500 crore in this space, and our sources tell us that the government has already finalized its proposal. Tata Motors, whereas it is also eyeing a similar kind of investment of about 500 to 600 crore, but it is yet the government and Tata Motors are still in talks to finalize this proposal. As far as JSW Energy is concerned, it is expected to invest about 10,000 crore in its EV plan. Now remember, JSW Energy has also signed a similar agreement with Gujarat government. It has signed an MOU with the Gujarat government, but now it remains to be seen which way JSW Energy takes its EV plans forward. But as far as Maharashtra government is concerned, it is eyeing a good amount of investment in this EV space, where it plans to support about 5 lakh electric vehicles in the next 5 years.
Shraddha Babla is here with the stocks in news. Shraddha, what are the stocks on your list today?
Good morning, Alex. Starting off with some of the strong earnings that were reported by companies. United Spirits was one of them. Revenue growth of 7%. On the other hand, the net profit came in at 211 crores as compared to a net loss of 104 crores in the year ago quarter. But that was, of course, on account of a one-time loss of 291 crores. Despite that, is a clear beat on the bottom line in this quarter. EBITDA grew by about 5% and margins came in at 12.6%. You also have Moil, where revenue grew by 57%, so a strong top line growth coming in there. Net profit grew by just about 10% because higher tax weighed on the bottom line performance. EBITDA, on the other hand, was again seeing a good growth of 42%. EBITDA margins came in at 43.5%. You have Sudarshan Chemicals, revenue growth of 31%. Net profit growth came in line at about 32%, and this was restricted by a higher tax outgo, because if you look at the operational performance, the EBITDA grew by a much stronger 70%. You have Kaveri Seed Company, where revenues grew by 5%. The company reported a narrower net loss of 18 crores as compared to a loss of 87 crores in the previous quarter. The previous quarter, of course, had an exceptional loss of 59 crores. The company has also announced a buyback of 29.63 lakh shares at the buyback price is 675. So that will probably weigh on the stock today. Weak numbers coming from Triveni Engineering, the sugar manufacturer. Revenue down by 18%, net loss of 102 crores and EBITDA loss of 114 crores. That apart, you also have a notification from Avenue Supermarts. They've said that the founder, Radhakrishnan Damani, has completed the sale of his 1% stake between 21st May and 24th May. Yesterday also he sold some stake in a bulk deal. This was, of course, to achieve the minimum public shareholding requirement. So that has been completed. They have updated us. Gayatri Projects, they've received a letter of award for a highway project in Telangana, which is worth 425 crores. And lastly, Shaili Engineering, where HDFC Mutual Fund has bought 2.4% stake in the company in a bulk deal yesterday. The seller is DSP BlackRock Emerging Stars Fund. So again, HDFC Mutual Fund increasing their stake in Shaili Engineering.
All right, thanks for that, Shraddha. Now, you're probably already aware of the anti-Sterlite protests in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu. As many as 12 protesters had been killed earlier in police firing there. DMK's working president has called for a bandh from dawn to dusk today. And apart from that, the chief minister in Tamil Nadu also broke his silence and called the police firing unfortunate. In a chat with Bloomberg Quint earlier, the chairman of publishing house The Hindu, N. Ram, has said that the Tamil Nadu government has failed to balance out development and environmental concerns. Listen in.
To strike this balance is very difficult in a poor country where there's so many poor people, and yet you want to develop fast. It is a real problem, but the problem is no clear rules and norms have been laid down, and the environment, environment protection has got very corrupt in India. Everybody knows that. There have been a few honest ministers, and they don't last very long at the central level. At the state level, it is equally bad in many parts of the country. So I think there is no clarity about, if you want to strike the balance, you have to be clear on what the environmental protection demands, what location demands. Where can you locate an industry like this, which is seen by large numbers of people to pollute, to poison the environment, to poison water, and so on. Of course, the management will always deny these allegations. We saw that with the leather tanning industry in a part of Tamil Nadu and elsewhere, and the Supreme Court closed it down, and then they did the right thing later on after a considerable effort and at a huge cost. But that's what you require them to do. So I think it is, there is corruption. I think this corruption is a good part of where we are today. It has led up to it.
All right, stay with us over the course of the day and you'll find a lot that you can read and view on the website bloombergquint.com. Here are a few stories that are already up and that you should consider reading. First up, Union Oil Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has said the government is deliberating on an immediate solution to deal with the rising fuel prices. One option is to bring petroleum products under the purview of the Goods and Services Tax. That would significantly reduce the effective tax rate on petrol and diesel, which currently stands at over 100% for petrol. In 2013, this was around the 40% mark. The Enforcement Directorate has filed its first charge sheet in the Punjab National Bank fraud case. The law enforcement agency stated that over 6,400 crore rupees of bank funds were laundered abroad to dummy companies by Nirav Modi and others. It also alleged that a sum of $50 million out of the total was diverted to Modi's father, Deepak Modi, who was reported to be based in Antwerp, Belgium. And the Telecom Department has cleared the sale of standalone mobile towers of Idea Cellular for 4,000 crore rupees to Indian arm of American Tower Corporation, and that paves the way for the merger of Idea and Vodafone India. All right, over the past couple of days, BJP ministers have been championing the Hum Fit to India Fit movement that was started by Rajvardhan Singh Rathod. And the trend has taken social media by storm, with celebrities and sports stars taking up the challenge. But the movement has now turned into a political battle. The opposition, led by Rahul Gandhi, has posed a new challenge to Prime Minister Modi. The question is, will he accept it? Have a look.
आपके फिटनेस का मंत्र क्या है? एक वीडियो बनाइए, पिक्चर खींचिए और सोशल मीडिया पर डालिए ताकि पूरा देश प्रेरित हो जाए। आइए हम सब मिलकर एक फिट इंडिया बनाएं। हम फिट तो इंडिया फिट।
So I'm going to go work on my push-ups. I'll see you next week on Monday at the same time. Thanks so much for watching Daybreak on Bloomberg Quint.